Our city, beautiful city, was abandoned. And nature took over quickly, as it always has.
The breakdown would be rather rapid. The flooding of Manhattan would have a real destabilizing effect. The subway tunnels would flood and they would stay flooded. The columns that hold up the streets, they're steel, they will rust, they will corrode. The streets above them start caving in, and lo and behold, we have surface rivers once again in Manhattan.
Nature has that momentum, you see, to take this thing back. Practically become like a jungle here. It won't be the asphalt jungle, it'll be the real jungle.
Your big skyscrapers here are well anchored into Manhattan schist. On the other hand, they weren't designed to be waterlogged. It just takes one hurricane to hit New York. Buildings are going to start to get taken out.
And it wasn't just the city. Our whole way of life had crumbled. But I found my daughter Molly and Daniel, my grandson. He was a young man now. Molly's husband, George, had been killed. Both of us were widows now. It is a hard life. The United States is fragmented into a million shards. We're all cut off from each other, each protecting what little we have.
It would be a wrenching transition. It would be a catastrophic transition. It's something we don't want to experience. The Dark Ages were called the Dark Ages for a reason.
I fear that we'll see a world like medieval Europe, where you have feudal states fighting for what remains of a source of water, a source of energy.
We managed to produce our own power and communicate over radio waves. The cities that have endured are now walled fortresses, jealously guarding whatever remains of the computer age.
I'm picturing enclaves of affluence and wealth, but surrounded by vast masses of people who will be barely surviving.
In effect, humanity could very well be in hell, where hell is defined as truth realized too late.
We have had to relearn what we had unlearned centuries before. How to live off the land, how to make do.
I think we'll see a world in which literature, the arts, democracy, those will disappear, largely disappear.
How much of the wonderful scientific breakthroughs of the 20th and 21st century will still be retained? If it's some electronic-based thing, it could all be lost.
My grandson Daniel might never hear a symphony, go to college, or read the books I read. He will never marvel at a right whale, the beauty of a coral reef, or a spotted owl.
If you actually ever get outside and just kind of look at the wonder of the world, it takes your breath away. And I think to think of a world where somehow that is taken away is really sad.
We're going to leave a planet that is so desperately beaten up that it will probably take hundreds of thousands of years to get it back, to restore it. We will have lost so much of our natural heritage.
I can teach him poems and songs. I can tell him what I saw and what I learned along the way. I can try to tell him what is precious What is precious? I ought to know that. They say I am the oldest woman on earth. With age is supposed to come wisdom. What is precious? This earth of ours. This garden we must tend. These people we love.
Our future is not yet written. The ending to our story can still be changed. That when we come back. Lucy's story is a worst-case scenario of what could happen if we continue on our current path. It's a wake-up call, a challenge for us to plan a different course. But our experts say we must act immediately. Where did Lucy's world go wrong? What can we learn from their mistakes? We turn back the clock now to show you a vision of a future we can still create.
There's a future out there that's a much better future than the present that we're living in right now, to be sure.
If we took the measures we should take, 2100 would be at the beginning of an era that we today would regard as paradise.
We have a chance to get it right, to move from a disconnected, inefficient world of fighting populations to a sustainable planet. The problem we face today is how do we get from here to there?
The world that Lucy was born into is our world today. There are plenty of signs that it's in trouble, but there are hopeful signs as well.
The problems that we face, water, soil, climate change, they're all problems caused by humans, so we're capable of solving those problems.
It could be overwhelming if we let it. I just try to take it one brick, one chunk at a time. I think that's how you have to deal with it.
So what should we do right now to chart another course? How do we avoid ending up in Lucy's world? Many experts say the first step should be transforming how we use energy. Much of what we need to do, we already know.
Plant a garden. Use compact fluorescent bulbs or mass transit for people. Insulate your homes. Smaller cars.
There is no simple solution, but 100% of the Earth's population doing a very small thing makes a very big difference.
But individuals alone won't be able to turn things around. Governments and industries are going to have to change on a massive scale.
We're going to have to come up with more solar, more wave power, more geothermal energy.
Beyond the familiar technologies, amazing new ones are already in the works. Fields of solar balloons that could power thousands of homes a day, a nuclear fusion facility that could produce the energy of a tiny man-made star.
We can't drill and burn our way out of our problems, but we can invent and invest our way out.
Getting enough of these projects up and running will take people, and that means jobs. And if we can put more people back to work, then by 2015, instead of communities disintegrating, they could start to rebound.
You can fight pollution and poverty at the same time. You can beat global warming and the economic downturn with the same dollar bill if you invested in green jobs, green energy, green technologies.
If we start those investments today, there wouldn't be gas lines and fights as in Lucy's world. Instead, there would be electric cars that could run 300 miles per charge. But completely redesigning our energy system would require rapid change. It would mean both sacrifice and hard work for the whole country. But we have done it before.
The thing I would compare it to is World War II. After Pearl Harbor, FDR turned to Detroit, the automakers, and said, you will now make tanks. You will now make Jeeps. Just like that. That was like overnight almost. And they did it.
And we won that war. It's going to take that same level of commitment.
Imagine that all of us did enough things that it made a real difference in our country. What effect does that have on China, on India, on other nations?
Well, if we don't set an example as the strongest and most important country in the world, what do we expect them to do? They're not going to follow if we don't lead.
World leaders are gathering in Washington, D.C. to attend an emergency global summit meeting.
A turning point in Lucy's world was the Global Summit of 2015, when the world leaders failed to agree on actions to slow climate change.
We do not accept the offer.
They set in motion all the disasters that would follow. But what if they had agreed?
For the first time ever, China, India, the U.S., and Europe have reached an agreement that could avert catastrophic climate change.
By tackling climate change, you end up tackling energy, you end up tackling food, you end up tackling water resources.
You could change this vicious cycle, I think, into a virtuous cycle.
Then what we could see is actually billions of people coming into far more stable, sustainable, prosperous economies.
As we move forward in the century, we will see the investments and hard choices we made early on begin to pay off.
The positive scenario is fossil fuels will be disappearing. We're growing more food with less water. We've restored ecosystems.
By the middle of the century, we would be using water and other resources much more carefully. Farmers would be planting drought-resistant crops. Water would be recycled, and there would be enough to support the U.S. Southwest. In 2050, places like Las Vegas could survive. The hope is that once we figure out how to solve these problems, we'll be in a much better position to help the rest of the world.
If we can actually raise the prospects of the bottom few billion people, we actually make global stability possible.
We reduce mass migration, refugee movements, desperation, actually slow population growth. And if we do all those things, we just bring a sustainable world prosperity closer to hand.
So there's a very good chance by about 2050, the worst part of the crisis having passed. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be big problems still to face, but it means that we will have avoided sailing right off the cliff.
When we come back, a different vision of the year 2100. By 2100, our world could be transformed.
Just imagine a city that's not polluted, that has a great transportation infrastructure.
Stackable cars or cars that are folding, and then they would charge and be a shared ownership model, and you would just pull out the one that's available that's fully charged. Everything happens inside the city itself. That means our food production, our waste and recycling, our energy.
We're going to have joint management of water resources, of energy resources. We're going to be living on a planet where we don't see things at a national level, but we see things at a global level.
By the time we get to 2100, the challenge of building a global green economy where we're sharing technologies, not fighting wars over water and oil, that's going to bring out the best in the human family.
Humanity will be relatively disease-free. Children will be treated as rare treasures.
Most people don't realize not only can we change, we must change. And I think that's how you own the future. That's how you take control of your destiny.
I have huge faith in humanity.
We will be able to create a world that will have a livable planet for our kids and their kids. That is our opportunity. That is our obligation.
Kids born today will see us navigate past the first greatest test of humanity, which is, can we actually be smart enough to live on a planet without destroying it?
In December this year, nearly 200 countries plan to meet in Copenhagen, Denmark. Their mission to draw up a strategy to finally come up with a global agreement to slow climate change and safeguard the planet. If you'd like to learn more about Earth 2100, or if you want to get involved in the solutions, go to our webpage at abcnews.com. I'm Bob Woodruff. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.